Hello. All right. I think we are live. Happy Friday night to those of you who celebrate. Um, as always, I have Den who is helping out with comments. He will sign everything under Friendly Atheist, but he will sign his name to any comments. Um, the usual drill. You could support this show and my channel by going to patreon.com/Hemant. And if you want a question answered, just leave a super chat. I will get to those in between stories. And please ask a million questions. That way we have things to do between stories. I have a few things that I know we have to discuss. And before I do that, just checking to make sure everything's good. I have a million small little video clips we're going to play for everyone. Okay. I am going to start this by talking. I want to talk about a story that apparently happened like a month ago, but the climax of the story happened now, which is why I think it's worth discussing. And it kind of involves this book. It partly involves this book. It's a children's book, The Adventures of Cece and the Sheriff. As far as I could tell, this is a nice little children's book. It's not an allegory for something else. It's just a story about, two friends, and it's all well and good. So the reason I bring that up is because the author of that book, his name, as I showed you a second ago, his name there is Dominic Thrasher. And he just released this book not that long ago. I guess he used to be an actor. Now he's turned to writing. And he lives in Michigan. And he visited his hometown of Beale City because a friend of his from I don't know how long ago, but a friend of his said, "Hey, I work with kids. Can you come to my school and read your book for my students? I think they'd get a kick out of it." So he was super excited to do it. It turns out those students, they're in pre-kindergarten. We're talking like 4-year-old students. They're students at St. Joseph the Worker School, basically a Catholic school. His friend said, "Come on by, read your book." And as far as I could tell, everything went great. It was actually, March was National Reading Month. Everyone had a great time. There was a story about this, and I love the quotations from Dominic Thrasher. Check this out. He said it was just a great time. Here he is in a news article. "It was amazing. Oh my God. It was so much fun," he said. And later on, "The kids were so excited, and I actually ended up staying for snack time too." That's awesome. That sounds great, right? Everyone had a good time. The kids loved it. He loved it. And in the days to follow, this was in early March, in the days to follow, no one complained about it because why would they? There was nothing to complain about. But apparently, like a week after all this happened, the priest who basically runs the church that oversees this Catholic school, the priest's name is Thomas Held. He posted something on Facebook that amounted to an apology. Here's what he posted and then deleted not that long after. But let's read through this together because it's wild. And maybe you're wondering, what the hell is what's an apology for? I mean, that's a good question. All right, dear school parents and all parishioners of St. Joseph the Worker. Recently, a guest who does not represent the values of our Catholic faith read to our pre-K children as part of our March's Reading Month activities. To my knowledge, the book and any related conversation was appropriate for our students. A St. Joseph teacher was present in the room at all times. I was unaware that the guest had been invited. As your pastor, I will see to it that a new vetting process is put in place in order to minimize anything of the sort from happening again in the future. Thank you for your fidelity to the faith. Father Tom Held. It's like, what the hell? What is he talking about? Just to highlight the big stuff here. This guy doesn't represent their values. even though the book was appropriate and everything they talked about was appropriate. And a teacher was there because, of course, a teacher would be there, even though nothing would have happened if the teacher wasn't there. And then it says, we're going to make sure there's a vetting process in place because this can never happen again. And I'm reading that thinking, what is this that you are so afraid is going to happen again? Because nowhere in that posting does it say anything about what went wrong. Did something go wrong? Who knows? Like, that's how much he was dodging the issue. What is it about Dominic Thrasher's visit that violated Catholic values? What did he do that requires a new vetting policy? You all know the answer. You don't even need me to tell you the answer. But we'll go ahead and connect the two dots, right? Dominic Thrasher is gay. That's what this is all about. That's why they're mad about everything. That's the whole controversy. And his children's book that he wrote has nothing to do with that. The book wasn't about that. It's not an allusion to that. He didn't discuss his sexual orientation with the students. He didn't discuss anything with the students. He just read them his book. Like, he read them a perfectly non-controversial, lighthearted book. But this priest felt the need to apologize to everyone in the community for the horrific crime of, I guess, allowing a gay person to interact with kids and breathe the same air. Like, even for the Catholic Church, that's a level of bigotry you don't often see. Because, I mean, the Catholic Church has long held the position that being gay, not a problem. Acting on it, big problem. But no one was acting on anything, and no one was talking about it. So, like, what are we doing here? So, to publicly condemn the invitation of a gay author to read to students, that doesn't make sense even under the Catholic Church's rule book. And the person who was hurt the most in all of this was the author, Dominic Thrasher. This is what he told a local news reporter. Here we go. It just angers me what he said, Thrasher said. The way he made me feel like I'm a predator or like a convict or something coming into the school. Thrasher said this isn't the first time his sexuality has been an issue for others. 12 years ago, I was asked to give this commencement speech at my alma mater, a private Catholic school, he said. Then, once they found out I was gay, I've been openly gay ever since I came out. That was at 21, so it was no shock to anybody. Everybody knew that. But once they found out, I was disinvited to give the commencement speech because being gay, I don't know, I'm going to ruin people or something. Thrasher thought life had already thrown enough obstacles his way. I was diagnosed with ALS a year ago. I don't have a lot of time. So I just want to share my gifts and my love to the world. Like, oh my God. I want to hug this man. I've never talked to him before, but that sounds devastating. Why are we mad at this guy for doing absolutely nothing wrong? Like, his visit to the school was literally a win-win for everyone. He got to read his book to kids. The kids seemed to enjoy themselves. Everyone left happy. It was the Catholic priest who decided to ruin things by reminding everybody that the Catholic Church is fundamentally a bigoted institution. By the way, I got to show you this picture of our friend Dominic Thrasher here because it look at this man. He's devastated by what they did to him. Why would you do this to this poor man? Let him read his children's book to the kids. Okay. So here's the thing about that apology. That wasn't an apology. I don't know what that was. Parents wanted answers. They wanted Father Tom Held, the priest who started this whole mess, they wanted him to resign. One parent here even wrote an open letter. Check this out. Wrote an open letter like the week all this happened. It was one page. It detailed Father Tom Held as someone who had fallen short in his tenure as parish priest, partly due to a lack of engagement and support for the children of St. Joseph and interactions that left members of the community feeling unheard or marginalized. So even the parents were pissed off by this guy not even doing a good job at his one job, but then going out of his lane and complaining about something that he had no right to complain about because nothing bad happened. And that wasn't the only form of backlash that happened either, because the day after that letter was posted online, check this out, for safety reasons, St. Joseph was closed the next day on Thursday because of harsh online reaction to the apology. And on Friday, oh my God, 79 of its 92 students stayed home, including a parent who wrote that open letter. So, like, everyone is just furious at this priest for doing whatever he thought he was doing. Everyone was mad about that. And then, of course, the Catholic diocese has to now step in to make things better. And of course, they did not make anything better. They released a statement. Check this out. The Saginaw Diocese has now responded to the Fox 17 story by sending the following letter on Catholic Diocese of Saginaw letterhead from Superintendent of Schools Cormac Lynn to St. Joseph the Worker School families. Blah, blah, blah. You're in my prayers. No one cares. No one cares. Here's the interesting part. Bishop Gruss has reached out directly to Mr. Thrasher in the hope of opening direct dialogue. That right there is a dumb thing to say. Why are you reaching out to the author for dialogue? There's no two-way communication that needs to happen here. There's a one-way communication that needs to happen. It's an apology from the school and the diocese to this amazing dude who is reading his book to kids. What are they dialoguing about? That's a dumb letter to send to these parents. And guess what? It just made them angrier, because clearly the Catholic diocese doesn't get why everyone is mad. So then they started protesting. Okay. Um, they started protesting outside the church. Oh, by the way, I should say, the Diocese of Saginaw, they said that some people had been complaining about this author that came to their school. Apparently, these people complained that he was in a same-sex relationship, to which I say, who cares? None of your business. He wasn't asking to get baptized in the church. He wasn't asking to get married in the church. He was just reading to kids upon invitation from someone who works at the school. Like, if the new rule is that practicing Catholics cannot be in the same space as LGBTQ people, Pope Francis needs to get up and say something. Instead, the diocese just couched their prejudice in religious weasel words, saying, they said in the letter, we are all created in the image and likeness of God and called to love one another, which might sound fine out of context, but how is that a defense of the Catholic Church's bigotry? Like, that is not something you put in there because that's just going to piss everyone off. So again, parents were furious. They were furious at the post on Facebook. They were furious at the way the diocese chose not to handle any of this well. And so people began protesting. There were protests on Sundays outside the church. Look at this picture in the Darien Times. Those are Catholic believers outside the church. You could see a rainbow flag there somewhere. And they're protesting outside the church. It's incredible. That is amazing. You don't see that. You see people like me protesting outside of a church when they do stupid things. There was something else I want to show you. It's not in there, but they're mad. They're very mad. And elsewhere, this is also interesting. They held signs. Look at this right here. The diocese had supported Father Tom Held, even as hundreds of people held Sunday protests against the priest's remarks and leadership style. They made signs that said, there's nothing righteous about bigotry disguised as religion, and love thy neighbors, no exceptions. So, holy crap, those protesters are going all out, and that is incredible. And so that brings me to what happened finally, like last week, because this went on for several weeks. Okay. Late last week, the diocese finally announced a resolution to all of this somehow. You could see statement from Bishop Robert Gruss. This is dated April 16th. And let's see what this says. Because of the unfortunate situation at St. Joseph the Worker Parish in Beale City, Father Thomas Held has come to the decision that it would be impossible for him to bring unity to the church, and therefore he has tendered his resignation as the pastor effective immediately. All the protesters got this dude to resign. But wait, they're not done. They didn't. First of all, you could have ended the whole thing right there. Maybe a sorry would be nice to hear. No, no, no. That's not what they did. Let's keep reading. The division, lack of charity, and the wounds caused by the division in the St. Joseph the Worker Parish community has brought deep sadness to the Lord Jesus, especially when we are living in the light of the resurrection we celebrated on Easter Sunday. Jesus weeps when he sees division and disunity in the body of Christ, his church. It is not his desire nor his will. Okay, what the hell? The division, the lack of church. So basically, what the diocese is saying is, hey, protesters, hey, parents, all you people complaining, you're making baby Jesus cry. This is all your fault for not standing with us and forcing this good man over here, this Father Tom Held, to have to resign because all of you hate him. Like, oh my God, they are victim blaming when it's not even something that has two sides to the story. This is all the diocese's fault. And they're like, you made Jesus angry. How could you do such a thing? That is a weird way to admit you're wrong. Bishop Gruss over here refuses to admit and to acknowledge the church's own role in promoting bigotry, and he won't admit that Tom Held went too far in his Facebook post. So I guess the good news is that that priest won't be leading that church that oversees the school. The bad news is that no one in leadership here in the diocese has come out and apologized for what he did to Dominic Thrasher. No one will admit that his Facebook post was disgusting and inappropriate. No one's going to be held accountable for this latest stain on the church's reputation. And the thing about resigning from the Catholic Church under your own volition is that there is nothing stopping that priest from walking, I don't know, 2 blocks down to the next Catholic diocese and setting up shop over there. Like, what's stopping him from getting a job at another church? That's what they do with predators all the time. So why wouldn't they do it to this guy who's just a bigot? There's nothing that the diocese did not say he's resigning and he's going to find a job as a welder, which would be nice. He would actually be doing something useful. No, no, no. They're just saying he's resigning from this particular church. So I don't know where he's going to pop up next, but it's probably another church. But like, again, none of this is going to matter. Like, I don't know if the protesters think they won, but none of this will make a difference unless the parents who send their kids to St. Joseph the Worker School and who go to the church overseeing that school, unless they transfer their kids out of the school and then leave that particular church and pack up and go somewhere else, none of this is going to make a difference. They need to abandon the school and they need to abandon the parish. Like, no money going to the diocese no matter what. No time or volunteer hours wasted anymore in that church. That's what they got to do. That's the only thing that will make a difference. And if they don't do that, then the church wins because the church gets everything it ever wanted. I saw this from one of the parents reacting to his resignation, and this upset me a little bit. This is one of the parents leading the charge. We can finally, now that he's resigned, we can finally begin the process of healing and restoring the sense of unity that defines our community, said this parent who has children in the parish school. No, no one's going to heal. No one's going to be restored unless you all quit, unless you move your kids, send them to a good public school nearby, send them to another Catholic school or another church. No, don't send them to a Catholic school. Send them to a different private school if you need to. But like, you haven't won because as far as the church is concerned, problem solved. Protests have ended. As far as the author goes, he's still persona non grata. They still get all the money from tuition dollars and everyone's still coming to church. What did the church lose as a result of the protest. One priest who moves 3 doors down. Like, so no, none of this is over unless people actually take a stand and like stand up to the Catholic Church. As far as I can tell, that has not happened. No one is leaving. In case you're wondering, the author of that book, Dominic Thresher, he did respond to the resignation. This is what he said. In response to Hell's resignation, Thrasher told Fox 17, a battle has been won, but the war is not over. And he's right, because the bigotry is still in the church. The church is still standing. They are still getting money from all the parents who are mad at them. So, like, yes, a small battle is won, but this is far from over. And if that's the case, why is everyone celebrating that anything won? He later said, Dominic Thrasher, he later said, and I liked this comment too. He said that the bishop's comments basically gaslight and blame the parishioners for the reason why he's not going to be there anymore, which is still a shame. And he's right. And for that reason, any decent member of that parish should make plans to get the hell out of there, because the church leaders are not going to change. And it seems like the people who attend the church and send their kids to the school, they are way better human beings than the people running the church. So get out. You can do better. Gonna pause there for now. Let's take some questions while we are here. Even just seeing the cover, that art is really cute. Yeah, it looks like a cute book. I didn't get a chance to read it. I'll pull it up here one more time, so you could see the cover here if I could find it. Here we go. Look at this cover. Aw, they look like they're having fun. I think CC and the sheriff are the names of two of his pets or something like that. But yeah, it looks like a cute book. Go buy the book. I have known people that would be outraged if a gay person interacted like that with children. I'd say I would trust the average gay guy off the street more than a Catholic priest. I find that stunning that people would be mad because as far as the school is concerned, it should not have mattered that this author was gay. It was irrelevant to anything he was doing there. The book is not about that. He wasn't talking about that. But the fact that it's the same argument some people have when it comes to like trans people using the correct, appropriate bathrooms. It's like, well, we don't want trans people in our bathrooms. It's like, buddy, you've been in bathrooms with trans people. Odds are you didn't know that. And of course, it didn't affect you, because why would it? When I go to the bathroom, I'm not talking to people. I'm definitely not looking. So, like, why would it make a difference? You're mad about something you didn't even think about until someone brought it up, and now you're going overboard. Like, it's a dumb thing to think. And it's the same thing here. Like, why is the Catholic diocese, why is the priest mad about any of this when it didn't matter? It's just dumb. Gay people should be past still having to insist upon fair treatment, but here we are still fighting the same damn bigots. It's true. I mean, yeah, you're right. Like, shouldn't we be over anti-gay bigotry? I thought we'd moved on to like anti-trans bigotry. No. We've never gotten over the anti-LGBT LGB bigotry. It's still happening. It's happening in church culture more than others, but it's still there. It's frustrating. He's blaming his parishioners for the division and controversy that he single-handedly caused. Yeah, the diocese is mad that the representatives of the diocese said stupid things. So, of course, they're blaming you, like everyone else. It is ridiculous. I live in mid-Michigan, and I had to Google map Beale City, which is not that far from me. A tiny place in a rural area. I'm actually amazed there were enough decent people who were ticked off. This is the amazing thing about, like, red cities, red towns, even in places that are rural, even in places you think are in the middle of the Bible Belt or a very Christian community. I think I've seen stories about this in like Grand Rapids too, which is like where the DeVos family comes from. There are still so many people who are supportive of civil rights, regardless of what type we're talking about. And that includes people who are religious, who are as mad as everyone else when religious people come along and do something stupid. Like, no one gets madder about that than like religious people who are like, don't lump me in with these bigots. I'm better than them too. So yeah, like it may be surprising, but it shouldn't be, because this happens all the time. There are like amazing Christians fighting the good fight in like Mississippi and Alabama and name your state. You know what I mean? It's great. All right. I think we are done with that. I'm going to pull up a couple other things here. Give me one moment and we'll talk about a different story. And by the way, if you have questions unrelated to this stuff, we'll get to those too in the middle of these. I swear the tabs are so tiny, they're hard to click on today. That's how many we're going through. Oh, okay. Let's do some videos too. Okay. There is a Republican lawmaker in Oklahoma who argued this week that it should be legal for public school teachers to beat students with disabilities in their classroom because not doing so, he said, would be unbiblical. And I need to back up because there's a lot packed into that sentence right there. The deal with Oklahoma right now is that it currently does allow corporal punishment in public schools, which is to say it allows teachers to like paddle, hit, spank a kid in school. It's legal. Doesn't mean teachers are going to do it, but it is legal. Now, that is a problem in and of itself, but the law at least has a carve out and says you're not allowed to hit kids with, and I'm quoting here, the most significant cognitive disabilities. So if they're really struggling with something, you're not allowed to touch them. But everyone else, if they're acting up, spank them all you want, right? And again, why does the law say you can't hit kids with significant cognitive disabilities? Obviously, because they may not even understand that they're doing something wrong. So at that point, you're just hitting them for no reason. They don't understand it. And if they don't understand it, why are you doing it? So anyway, even Republicans in Oklahoma are like, you guys, this makes us look really bad. We should fix this law. And last year, they did try to fix this law, but they did not fix it to say we should like not hit kids. We should definitely not let teachers hit kids. That would have been the correct answer. No, these are Republicans in Oklahoma. They did not go that far. No, instead, what they said is, why don't we make the exemption a little broader? Why don't we say, of course, teachers, of course you can hit kids. But instead of just saying you can't hit kids with significant cognitive disabilities, what if we say you can't hit any kid with any disability? Doesn't matter how significant it is. And this was their way of fixing the problem. It is messed up. So basically, if your kid has an individualized education program, like an IEP, they have some kind of disability, regardless of what it is, the revised law would say, all right, you're not allowed to hit them either. So, yeah, it is an improvement over the current law, but it's still a shitty law, right? Okay, but that's what they tried to do last year. And the thing is, one Republican even signed on as a co-sponsor of this bill specifically because, and I'm quoting here, he said, there's going to be nobody who's for corporal punishment on students with disabilities. This Republican thought it was going to be an easy vote. So he's like, sign me up. I'm going to be a sponsor of this bill. And then maybe he realized, oh, right, Republicans in Oklahoma. Like they will always find a way to defend abuse in the name of Jesus. So here's what happened last year. Last year, there was a state representative, Jim Olson, he's a Republican. He argued that the Bible allows you to hit kids as a form of discipline. He cited Proverbs chapter 13, verse 24, which is the verse that gives us spare the rod, spoil the child. So he says, look, the Bible says we got to hit kids to keep them in line. And somebody challenged him at the time. They shared this with him. This is the American Academy of Pediatrics. And basically, this is an old news release. I think it's from 2018. Yeah. And it says, spanking harms children. And you could see the headline there. In an updated policy statement on corporal punishment, the American Academy of Pediatrics points to mounting evidence that supports its call to ban physical discipline. And so someone else raised this to the Republican person who was arguing for this bill. And what did Jim Olson say? Jim Olson said it didn't matter because, and I'm quoting here, God's counsel is higher than the American Academy of Pediatrics. There was another Republican, Randy Randleman, who said teachers need the threat of corporal punishment in order to keep their classrooms in order. But, like, okay, I was a teacher in a public school for several years. If your classroom is so chaotic that physical discipline is your only solution, you're a bad teacher. And if you think threatening kids with disabilities no less, by hitting them uh, is your only way to keep them in line, then you're a shitty parent. And if you think giving parents and teachers the right to team up to beat up children with disabilities is the best way to correct their behavior, like, you're a shitty politician too. So here's the thing. That bill, it did make it through the Oklahoma State House easily. It was amended a little bit, and it said parents had to sign off on whether teachers could hit kids with disabilities or something like that. Parents got the final say. Teachers can't just beat them on their own, which, all right. That bill was heading to the state Senate. And again, you would think, all right, maybe some idiots are going to fight against this, but it should pass. And then it just sat there. And nothing happened with this bill for like over a year until this week, when senators finally brought it up for discussion. And this time they got rid of the opt-in clause for parents, which is a good move. They basically said, we don't care if parents say it's okay to beat kids with disabilities. How about we just amend the bill we're talking about and just say, just don't hit kids with disabilities. Teachers, we don't care if the parents give you a green light, you still can't do it. So again, good. That was the right move. And I want to show you this bill because I want to show you what it actually says inside of it. This is what the bill says. Here we go. This is the text of the bill. You can see here, we are talking about House Bill 1028 up here. And if I scroll down a little bit, here's what they're changing. School district personnel shall be prohibited from using corporal punishment, which means hitting, slapping, paddling, or any other means of inflicting physical pain on students. You can't do it if what? Look, you could see they crossed out the most significant cognitive disabilities. They crossed it out and they replaced it with, you can't hit kids with a disability under state and federal regulations. Who has a disability? Well, they lay it out for us. For the purposes of this section, a disability includes autism, deafblindness, deafness, emotional disturbance, hearing impairment, etc. It goes on for a while. Anyone who has a 504 plan, an IEP, you cannot hit them. So good. Again, a better bill would say, how about just don't hit kids? But as far as this goes, all right, it's better than what they had in place. So this is the bill they were going to consider. By the way, I want to point out that means hitting, slapping, paddling, or physically punishing other kids still on the table. Teachers can still do that if they feel like it. It is horrible. But anyway, this week on Tuesday, when they were discussing this bill in the Oklahoma state legislature, there was a representative who decided to defend the abuse of children with disabilities, all in the name of Jesus. Let me show you a couple clips of what he is saying here. Let me find this right here. Here's the first clip. This is Shane Jett, and Shane Jett is a Oklahoma state senator from Oklahoma. So yeah, let me play you this first clip from Shane Jett.
Effectively, we're taking a tool that has been in the hands of parents and in the hands of schools to maintain discipline. And we're removing it from the parent's prerogative and saying, we, Big Brother, the state of Oklahoma, knows what's best for your child, and we're removing an entire motivational tool from discipline in the classroom.
We're removing an entire motivational tool. That's what he thinks hitting kids is. It's a motivational tool. Sure, some people use motivational speeches. Some teachers, like the ones you see in movies, will inspire kids to do their very best. But in this guy's view, the best way to motivate kids is by holding up a paddle or a stick or beating them with a belt or something. That's what he thinks parents ought to be doing. And having the state pass a law saying maybe in some cases you shouldn't do that. Well, that's just Big Brother right there telling teachers they know what's best for children, that the government knows what's best. Ridiculous. Um, Shane Jett later, this went on for like 20 minutes, but later in his rant, he brings up the fact that one reason people now believe spanking kids is wrong, not just the Academy of Pediatrics I mentioned, but Dr. Benjamin Spock, the famous doctor who wrote about raising your kids. It's like the famous baby book, who said, don't hit your kids. And so next, Shane Jett brought up Benjamin Spock and why we should not listen to him.
And this is an erosive and a corrosive element in the United States whenever Dr. Benjamin Spock published a book that said, don't discipline your children, don't spank your children. And a lot of people don't know that. His voice was elevated because it fit a particular agenda. Dr. Benjamin Spock was a socialist who ran for the People's Party. That means he's a communist.
He's a communist. If you don't hit your kids, you're a dirty commie socialist Bernie bro or something like that. Such a dumb thing. I had to look this up because I didn't know it. Like, what exactly did Dr. Spock think about politics beyond? I mean, I know what he said about babies, I guess, but I really didn't know his other political views. Let me tell you what he was for. He pushed for universal health care, the decriminalization of abortion, the decriminalization of homosexuality, guaranteed income for families, and an end to the stupid war in Vietnam. That guy sounds great, but apparently he's evil and we can't listen to him. Shane Jett also argued that if we love children, then we should be allowed to abuse them. And then, of course, he quoted the Bible.
I already cited Proverbs 13:24. Whoever spares the rod hates their child, but he who loves them disciplines them. And we're saying the state of Oklahoma has unilaterally decided if you have vision impairment, you cannot be disciplined, even if your parents want that. We're going to unilaterally take that away from our schools and our parents, more importantly. If you are hearing impaired, suddenly you're in a different class, you cannot be disciplined. And we've already made it abundantly clear that children can misbehave regardless of their abilities or inabilities, capabilities or incapabilities. Are we sending a message that we don't love our children?
Do we not love I thought we loved our kids and that's why we hit them, is something an abuser says all the time. Did you hear what he said? Are we seriously saying that if you have vision impairment and you're blind, you cannot be disciplined? Why do blind people get all the breaks here? If you're hearing impaired, what? You can't be whipped? Even if your parents want you to be? Oh my God, these are actually his arguments that a real human politician made on the floor of the legislature. And then he summarized it all and said, if we don't allow teachers to beat up kids with disabilities, society will crumble.
At the end of the day, you're looking at socialist/communist principles versus biblical principles, Jewish culture, Christian culture, and any common sense culture understands that if you don't discipline children, or you create a class of children that cannot be disciplined, those discipline problems are going to cascade through the rest of society. And we're seeing that now from Dr. Spock telling Christian parents, don't spank your children, and they follow Dr. Spock instead of the Bible. Dr. Spock was a communist who ran for president with the Communist Party. This is communist ideology. I urge you to vote against this bill. It is bad public policy.
And then, in his mind, he's thinking, yeah, drop the mic. And everyone's like, what is wrong with you? I have heard some people say, and I'm sure someone like him would have said this too, like, I was spanked as a kid and I churned out fine. That's why we need to keep allowing it to happen. But if you grew up to be the sort of person who says we should hit kids, especially kids with disabilities, you didn't turn out fine. You're messed up. So this guy is saying, what? We want to protect society. We gotta discipline the kids who are blind and deaf. Helen Keller had too easy of a life. We need to make sure she gets it. And the thing is, I know this guy seems completely messed up, but everything he's talking about is so. I mean, if you grew up in fundamentalist Christian circles, none of that is weird because you've seen this stuff before. This is, of course, the infamous book To Train Up a Child by Michael and Debbie Pearl, where they literally told, I mean, that's a best-selling book in fundy circles. They literally told parents how long your paddle should be when you're hitting your kids, how to properly hit them. I mean, it is as awful as it sounds. And I mean, they recommended that Christian parents. Oh, I had to look this up too because I was really curious. Maybe this law is in the books that teachers can hit their kids, but does that actually happen? Well, guess what? We have numbers to answer that question. Check this out. This is from McAllister News that did a long story about this issue. Oklahoma educators reported using physical discipline 3,968 times during the 2017-2018 school year, according to the most recent federal data available from the Office of Civil Rights in the U.S. Department of Education. The federal government reported that corporal punishment was administered at more than 1,800 Oklahoma schools. So 1,800 schools, almost 4,000 whippings or something. Like, this is not something that maybe one or two really horrible teachers did to rowdy kids. This is something endemic in Oklahoma schools. And these legislators are like, well, we could just say you're not allowed to do that. But why don't we say, how about don't hit kids who are disabled in some way? And then you still have Republicans like, no, 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 no. We got to make sure whipping is always on the table. Let's bring back lynching while we're at it too. I also wanted to look this up too. The same guy, Shane Jett. Check this out. He appeared on Glenn Beck's show a couple years ago. Glenn Beck interviews Senator Jett about his legislation to remove critical race theory from Oklahoma classrooms. So apparently, you got to be protected. Kids have to be protected from learning about systemic racism, but we got to make sure teachers have the option to beat kids with disabilities because they don't need protection from that. No, no, no. It's far worse that what's in their history books or something, all because the Christian faith, the conservatives believe that their Christian faith teaches them abuse is more effective than compassion. So this guy, Shane Jett, he kept talking. We're not done with him. And then he said, there are people in this room who basically oppose what I'm saying here, and they say it's foolish to fight this bill. So he had a message for them too.
You want to talk about foolishness? We've been talking about foolishness. Foolishness is calling miscarriages abortions. Foolishness is calling transgender sterilization affirmation. Foolishness is killing a baby in the mommy's womb and calling it women's health.
Foolishness. I mean, there are people who are trying to make the argument to legislators that when a woman suffers a miscarriage, the procedure she has to go through amounts to an abortion. So when you ban abortion, you're also saying women who have miscarriages out of their control, they can't get health care either. So he's like, oh, yeah, you two are trying to equate those things. That's foolish. And trans people getting health care is foolish. And what did he say? He said calling it women's health when you give them control over their bodies. That's foolish. Like, he's not just a bigot, he's also a misogynist. All because he is a Christian who is bathed in the blood of Christ or some weird bullshit like that. By the way, I looked this up too. Um, Literally, this is from there we go, the Frontier. Look at the first paragraph of this article. Thousands of women have traveled out of state or ordered abortion pills online to end pregnancies in the year and a half since Oklahoma banned most abortions. Like, this is real life. These people are literally forcing women to get out of Oklahoma to receive health care because lawmakers there don't want them to have it because they are Republican. And this guy wants to show those other Republicans than they are. I guess there is a little bit of good news here, which is that in the state Senate, here's a little update for you. Despite everything Shane Jett said, the bill passed 31-11. And I remember I told you the Senate removed that little change in the law that said parents had to opt in. They said, no, we don't care what the parents say. Teachers just can't hit children with disabilities. Because that is a change, and it's a good change, relatively speaking. It has to go back to the House because it was revised. Um, Den, can you still see me? I hope you could see me. Give me okay, you could see me. I don't know what happened there, maybe some internet thing. But again, this is a real problem. Den, if you could just get the timestamp on that, I'll fix that later. This is a real problem. If these people don't want to help they don't want to help women. We already knew that. They don't want to help trans people. We knew that. And now they don't want to help kids with disabilities. They would rather see them get hurt. Again, I know this bill passed and it should pass and it should get signed into law. But the fact that there are not just one dude, but like 11 Republicans who aligned with that guy and probably a few more in the House when they vote on it, that should disturb everybody. And I know it's Oklahoma. It's a long uphill climb to get rid of the Republicans in that state. But come on, how do you support that sort of rhetoric? It's just despicable. Corporal punishment is still going to be legal in Oklahoma, which is a travesty. But the least you could do is say, how about we let some kids off the hook because maybe they don't have maybe they don't necessarily know what they're doing when it comes to discipline. Maybe they're struggling with other stuff. Maybe we shouldn't make their life worse. Okay, I'm going to stop there for a bit. Let's take some questions here. Never ever hit special needs kids. I agree, and also you don't need special needs in there. How about don't hit kids? How about don't hit other people? Like that. My God, if you're working in education and the thought has crossed your mind, I should beat this child. Get out, find a different job. Is there a trial of some kind by the school admin, or is it going directly to lashing out with violence because of your abusive ego? You know what? I don't think there's any trial. I don't know what the rule is, but I don't think there are limitations on when teachers can paddle you or whip you. I would hope they like send you to the principal's office first, but then maybe the principal beats you. I don't know how it works because I didn't teach at a shitty school or in a shitty state. Sounds like Johnson is a funny voice for politicians. That Shane Jett sounds like Johnson, who sounds like Katie Britt, who sounds like all of them with that voice. That's a good question. I wonder what the male version of Fundy voice is. I don't know. It's got to be like that. Slightly higher pitched. I don't know. Hitting children only teaches them to get better at hiding things. It does not make them grow up to be good people. Yeah, I believe you 100% there. Like if you know discipline is awaiting you, then your best course of action is to hide things from your parents because telling them the truth is not going to be on your side. So I mean, it's bad parenting for a number of reasons, but the fact that your kids will never trust you and they won't come to you with anything if they actually need help, that should be one of the more disturbing elements of that. I can have a gun and beat on the kids. I should have been. I knew I should have been a teacher. Yeah, man. Oklahoma schools will let you do anything in the classroom except teach facts. I was spanked as a kid, and it never taught me anything other than how to avoid getting caught. Right on. Yup. Right there with you. That's exactly what we're saying. Just a dumb idea all around. Why should it be okay to hit children if we rightly recognize that hitting adults is assault? Great question, Carrie. Because they're young. And the funny thing is, all these people are pro life, and their argument for being pro life is they're innocent. They're babies. They need their fetuses. They need to be protected because they're innocent. It's our job to defend them on their behalf. Oh, they're born? All right, whip them. Who cares? We can paddle them. They don't need what? They don't need defense. They don't need us to come to their defense. They can take it. It's a 6-month-old baby to train up a child. That's what that book teaches. My God. Tune into any Mormon General Conference and you'll learn exactly how the male funny voice sounds, which is impressive coming from like men who are 137 years old. All right. I think we're done there. Let me close 17 tabs. Um, if that story angered you, just you wait. Just you wait. Okay. And hopefully there won't be any interruptions in the Wi-Fi this time around. Okay, let me see. So this week, the Supreme Court heard a case that centers around how cities should deal with the homelessness crisis. And obviously, big issue affecting large cities everywhere in America. One of the biggest revelations that I saw from that oral argument, it may have come from a Christian ministry that basically insisted the homeless need to be punished or converted. And I'll get into why that's so disturbing, besides the obvious, in a second. Let me give you a little background on this story in case you didn't follow it. The case involved the city of Grants Pass, Oregon, where apparently there are more homeless people than available beds in shelters, which raises the question of where are they going to go? So city leaders have chosen to address the problem not by building affordable housing or building more shelters, but rather by fining people on the streets like hundreds of dollars for using blankets, pillows, or cardboard boxes. If they catch you outside using like a little tent or your makeshift bed in public property, they're going to give you a fine because clearly you have the money to pay it. And when homeless people get multiple fines, then they can ban you from the city, which is basically them saying, we can't deal with this crisis, so we're going to shove you to the next city over and let them deal with you. It's a very Greg Abbott way of thinking. Like, oh, refugees coming into our states, let's bus them to Chicago. That'll solve everything. And the thing is, if those homeless people remain in the city, even after the fines, then they can be criminally prosecuted. So, like, the question comes up, what the hell do you want them to do at this point? Okay. Now, a previous legal case that the Supreme Court decided years ago, it already said those kind of penalties where you criminalize homelessness, they said you can't do that. That's unconstitutional. It's cruel and unusual punishment that violates one of the amendments, right? So, with the help of an attorney, a handful of homeless people in Grants Pass, Oregon, they filed a lawsuit against the city saying the city's ordinances were illegal. And this is the case that went all the way up to the Supreme Court. Basically, they said the local laws are punishing us for basically existing, and that's illegal. Plus, they added, we're not choosing to live on the streets. There really are no other options available for us. And why are you criminalizing our existence? Because you can't do that. And they won this case in all the lower courts. And then the city kept appealing and appealing, just hoping it'll get in the hands of Sam Alito. And that's what happened this week. It got to Sam Alito. It got to the Supreme Court, and this is the case in front of them. So the question is, should the city of Grants Pass be allowed to criminalize homelessness? I mean, it would be a disaster and another layer of cruelty if the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the city. Obviously, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to get into the legal arguments here. But what I do want to point you to are a couple of things that are really important about this case. The first thing is the people who filed the lawsuit, they were not kidding when they said there were a lack of options in the city. In fact, when this was in front of the appellate court like a while back, I want to show you what they said here because they were summarizing this case. And look at what this said. There's 4 places where homeless people are allowed to go in Grants Pass. And we'll get to Gospel Rescue Mission in a moment. But look at the other 3. In addition to the Gospel Rescue Mission, the city, number 1, the city itself operates a sobering center where law enforcement could transport intoxicated or impaired persons. So if you're drunk and they catch you, they can take you to a place. That facility has 12 locked rooms with toilets where you could sober up. The rooms did not have beds. That's option number 1. You can't even sleep there if you wanted to. And also it's for people who are like publicly drunk. Number 2, the city also provided financial support to the Hearts with a Mission Youth Shelter, an 18-bed facility where unaccompanied minors aged 10 to 17 could stay for 72 hours. So kids whose parents are like missing or something, kids can stay there for 3 days, longer if they have parental permission, and there's only 18 beds. So again, if you're a homeless person, that's not an option for you if you're an adult and you're homeless. Option number 3. Finally, on nights when the temperature was below 30 degrees or below 32 degrees with snow, the city operates a warming shelter capable of holding up to 40 individuals. No beds. So there you go. Like 40 people can be shoved into the warehouse, but there's nowhere for them to sleep. So 3 of the 4 options in the city are really not feasible. By the way, if it's not freezing outside, they can't even use option 3 because it's only a warming center. It was closed when it's not cold. So that leaves option number 4. Let me show you what option number 4 is. It's this place. Grants Pass Gospel Rescue Mission. This is the Christian mission that is the final, that's the only option for everyone to go to. And here's the thing about this place. This is a Christian mission. I want to find you. Okay. There was an article in the Baffler about this place, and it had so many interesting details. I want to read through this. I know it's long, but let's talk about this. Once an individual is accepted into that shelter, that Christian-run shelter, the only option, they must comply with all the house rules or sacred covenant, which hammer home the conditional nature of the charity on offer. So, important. In exchange for a bunk for 30 days, individuals are required to work without pay for 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. They have to work for the church, for the ministry, 6 hours a day, 6 days a week, no pay. Jobs include working for the mission's business ventures, cleaning streets downtown, for which the mission, but not you, are compensated. And during this 30-day period, residents can't even look for outside work. They can't even try to get back up on their feet because they're indentured servants to this Christian mission. And check this out. For Dolores Nevin, who once went to the mission with a torn rotator cuff and was turned away when she couldn't work, disabilities that prevent you from participating in daily mission life basically bar you from staying there. So if you can't work, if you can't do physical labor, this Christian mission is like, sorry, go back out on the street, where apparently the city doesn't allow you to stay. Wait, it gets worse. Residents must also attend a traditional chapel twice a day and go to a Christian church that follows the Nicene and Apostles' Creed. So basically, certain conservative Christian churches are fine, but if you're a Unitarian and you want to go to a Unitarian church, that doesn't count. We're kicking you out of here. You have to go to a good church at least once a week. Oh, wait, we're not done. If you smoke, you can't. You can't be here. Smokers are barred unless they agree to quit cold turkey and switch to nicotine patches. I don't smoke, but I am told that is not an easy thing to do. Another guy said this gives residents skin in the game, a way to make sure people are serious about leaving homelessness behind. Which, again, if you're on any kind of drugs, including cigarettes, it's not like you're doing it for funsies. Sometimes you just can't quit even if you want to. Among other petty rules, no socializing between members of the opposite sex, except at approved mission events. For residents, all intimate relationships other than legal biblical marriage, regardless of gender, either on or off mission property, are strictly forbidden. So basically, there's a rule that says no sex, even if you're married, for the 30 days you are here. That is the only feasible option for homeless people living in Grants Pass. So not only is there only option of friggin' church prison that operates like a cult, it's also saying you gotta believe in the Jesus that we believe in. Otherwise, you also can't stay here, because it's more important to them that you believe in their God than they help you. You know what I mean? If you don't want to believe what they believe, they would rather see you out on the street than actually help you, because that's what Jesus taught them to do. By the way, this is not related, but this is another headline I found about Gospel Rescue Mission. Oh, look, they asked disabled women to leave. Just get out. That's the whole headline. That's the sort of place we are talking about here. So this is why this case is so disturbing. Grants Pass, the city of Grants Pass, is saying, you have options. You can go to the Christian shelter if you need a place to stay. And everyone's looking at the Christian shelter and thinking that's not really an option for any decent person. Like, if you want that for yourself, fine, but that cannot be the only viable option there. So again, like I said, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to get into the legal specifics. What I will say is that if you look at cases like this anytime, one of the things you notice, this is from SCOTUS blog, when you look at a case in front of the Supreme Court, it shows you the history of the case, like when they asked the Supreme Court to take it up, when they did, all that. And then when you get into look at these yellow things, what these yellow highlighted items are basically other groups of people saying, listen, I have no involvement in this case, but I do have an opinion about how you should rule on it. So, hey, Supreme Court, I'm writing something called an amicus brief so you can read it and hear my arguments, because I have a vested interest in how you rule on this case. And the reason I say that's interesting is because you have all these third parties saying, we want you to rule this way. And then you can read what their arguments are. And, the Supreme Court justices are looking at these. Their clerks are looking at these. So you have a bunch of them I think this is in favor of the city. And then you have other ones in green here in favor of the homeless people. And it's always very interesting to see who's writing amicus briefs for which side. Because sometimes it'll be like every Republican in the Senate is on the side of banning abortion pills. And who's on the side of women? Like 47 progressive churches. It's all very interesting. But the reason I bring that up, there was an article in Religion News Service that talked about what some of these briefs said. And I wanted to show you one of these, if I could find it here. All right, I'll find it. Here we go. One of the guys who wrote an amicus brief, this is what he wrote. If I can find, there we go. Criminalizing, exploiting, and hurting poor and unhoused people is an affront to God and to Christianity itself and to other religious traditions themselves. That's a guy who works for a Christian group. Their organization wrote an amicus brief saying, by hurting the homeless, you're actually going against our Christian beliefs. They also said, I'm just going to quote here, that punishing poor and homeless people for the effects of their poverty and homelessness it fails to honor the holy nature of creation. Here it is. You could see this right here. This is from an amicus brief from this organization. This is just one of many religious organizations that's telling the Supreme Court how to rule on this. The universal bedrock beliefs of faith traditions have said for centuries that punishing the poor fails to honor creation and fails society as a whole. Here's another one. This is from the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. They are like notoriously anti-gay, anti-trans, anti-abortion. But here's what the USCCB said about this case. The Catholic Church, consistent with Western tradition, has long taught that the homeless are to be helped, not punished. It has also long taught that punishments must be proportional to the crimes for which they are imposed. Underlying both teachings is a simple principle: respect for human dignity. The city's punitive laws cannot be squared with this principle. So even the Catholic bishops are saying we got to have respect for human dignity, unless you're a woman, in which case they absolutely do not care. So I bring that up to say, even conservative and progressive religious organizations are telling the Supreme Court, you got to rule on the side of the homeless people here, because it is, we literally have a religious stake to help the homeless. You got to help them. It violates our religion for you to say that they should be punished for what they're dealing with, right? Who's on the other side? Who could possibly argue that, no, of course you got to kick the homeless out? Well, guess who just did that? It would be Gospel Rescue Mission. Let me show you this right here. This is the amicus brief filed. I'm going to scroll down here. Where is it? Grants Pass Gospel Rescue Mission. Where did it go? Here it is. This is their brief. And look at their conclusion right here. Municipal public safety laws are a crucial tool in helping the homeless take advantage of available safe shelter resources. Taking away the city's power to enforce those laws, as the lower court has done here, does not benefit the homeless, as that court evidently hoped. Instead, it has only hindered the efforts of those in Grants Pass who devote each day to bettering the lives of those facing homelessness, which is a weird way of saying we need you to punish the homeless and threaten them with fines and banishing them from the city, because if you don't do that, they won't come to us. And if they don't come to us, how are we going to get paid? How are we going to do our job? That is literally their argument here. They also said in that brief that the inability to punish the homeless, which is what the earlier decision said, has significantly decreased the number of people who access the mission services, as if that's a bad thing. They are literally calling for the city to fine and jail the homeless in the hopes that they become the only alternative for anyone seeking to avoid punishment. Because when you think you are the antidote, you start to root for poison. And that's what this Christian ministry is doing here. It is really interesting that the word God never appears in that amicus brief, which is not just unusual for a Christian ministry. It is very weird for anyone making an argument to this arch-conservative Supreme Court. Like, their argument is not a religious one, because how could it be? The ministry basically says we have beds available, but for some reason, a lot of them are going unused. And they're saying that's because the city can't punish these people. And it never occurs to them, maybe no one wants to stay at your shitty shelter because your rules suck and you're forcing your religion on all the people who go there. They seem blissfully aware of how off-putting their services are, that homeless people are like, what are my options? My options are living on the street or going to your like cult house where I can't have sex or a cigarette for a month. I'm going to go with living on the street. That's how awful these people are. And writing for Religion News Service, Kevin Nye, who wrote that article about what religious groups were saying in the Supreme Court case, this is interesting what he wrote, because even though if their argument is well-intentioned, Gospel Rescue Mission's plea raises serious legal and theological questions. For example, if the rescue mission, the only option in town, can shelter just 138 people, How can the government criminalize all 1,200 people experiencing homelessness in the city? Like, logistically, that doesn't make sense. Do Christian organizations have a theological mandate or even a justification for forcing religious programming in exchange for shelter and care? Can the government compel homeless people to stay at a shelter that has strict religious requirements without infringing further on their constitutional rights? Those are all excellent questions that don't really have good answers, especially if the Supreme Court sides with the Christian ministry in the city on this one, because it's just going to raise other problems. Like, the Christian shelter cannot be the only option. The long-term solutions for homelessness, as anyone who has studied the topic will tell you, they involve mental health care, addiction specialists, affordable housing, maybe a guaranteed income, secular, not atheist, but secular shelters. What you can't do is just punish them more and make it harder for them to get back up on their feet. But right now, the city of Grants Pass is not giving them secular, safe places to stay. Instead, Grants Pass is arguing that we have enough options in the city, and the only alternative is to further punish people who are already struggling. Makes no sense. It's completely insane logic. And the one Christian ministry directly involved in the case is going all in on the side of let's do more cruelty. I guess if there's any silver lining here, it's that according to legal pundits who watched this case, the oral arguments this week, they said it did not appear to be a slam dunk for the city of Grants Pass. But that said, it doesn't really matter, does it? Because this Supreme Court is absolutely going to side with the city and against the homeless people. It is what they do. It's why they were put on the court. They're religious conservatives for a reason. The question is, how broad or narrow will their decision be? We will see. For once, though, and I don't say this very often, it would be really nice if the Supreme Court justices would listen to all the religious groups, except for one, talking to them and saying, don't criminalize homelessness because you're just going to make a bad situation even worse. Going to pause there for a bit. Let's see if there are other questions here. Our delightful Tory government are considering laws like this in the UK. Oh, that's not surprising in the least. Listen, I don't know when they're going to call for the next election. I know it's got to be sometime soon, and I know the polls are very much on the side of Labour, but like, you need to vote out all those Tories. I know Keir Starmer isn't exactly like AOC or anything. He's not an inspirational figure necessarily, but like, get rid of that government. What are you people doing there? Good luck to you. What else we got? How is this legal? It involves Jesus. Therefore, that does the trick. The city said it's fine. I mean, it shouldn't be legal, but it sadly it is. What if you already have a job? Not all homeless people are unemployed. Thank you for pointing that out. I'll be honest, I don't know the answer, because if you're living at that Christian shelter, I think you are mandated to work for them for the, what was it, like 36 hours a week that they were forcing you to work. And I don't think you're allowed to focus on anything else except what you're doing at the ministry. But I'll be honest, I don't have a definitive answer on that. Just based on what I've read, I don't think they would allow you to keep that other job. Which again, you would think that sounds counterintuitive, because don't you want them to work and earn some money and then maybe get a house that's affordable? But that doesn't seem to be the case. Nothing wrong with slavery, according to their Bible. No, we're going to talk about that one a little later in a story or two. But yeah, there's a lot of, you could spin the Bible any way you want it to defend whatever horrible thing you want. And that's what they're doing here. Thanks, Lauren. Does the mission have an affiliation? Thanks, Den, for that question. You know what? I don't think I looked it. No, I lied. I did look it up, but it wasn't like a traditional affiliation. I would have to go back. If I can go to their about page, what did they say? They were very, you have to search. Here it is. Here's the line I was looking at. We are, where, oh my God, where did it go? Oh, our executive director meets with the local Church of the Valley pastors. Like, it's one of those vague answers that doesn't really tell you anything. I think it's just non-denominational Christian. I don't know that they're affiliated with any particular denomination, but it's disturbing. Okay, I'm gonna move to this next story in a second. Let me clean some of this up. All right. This is one, I'll be honest, I did not know much about this a while back, and now I've been fascinated by this, so I'll try to explain it. This is about the Maori people in New Zealand, which I don't know much about that history, the long history there. But I read a paper recently that kind of illuminated my eyes. Maybe it'll illuminate yours as well. But let me start with this image right here. This is from a New Zealand census in 2018. And this is what they found. This involves the religious affiliations for Maori people in New Zealand from the 2018 census. And you could see there the top column, the top row rather, is no religion. More than 50% of the Maori people say they have no religious affiliation. And like Catholicism there is second place and by a lot. Under 10% of Maori are Catholic. Um, and I think I read that maybe you should take that with a grain of salt because I think I read up to 30% of Maori were missed by the census. But even if they're missing a bunch of people, you could tell what the trend is. A lot of people, a lot of members of the Maori are not religious. And by the way, that number, 53.5%, that's a leap from 36.5%, which is what it was in 2006. So in the past, like 12 years or more than that now, like 17 years, they jumped from like a third of the Maori being non-religious to more than half of them being non-religious. And if the non-religious population is growing, then it makes you wonder, well, what's losing? What's shrinking? And the answer is all shades of Christianity are losing ground, which is interesting. And so that raises the obvious next question. Why the hell are they all running away from organized religion? And if this was the United States, we have some answers for that. Here's one example. I think I shared this in another live stream, but this is a recent survey from PRRI. And it basically asked people who are non-religious, why are you non-religious? Why did you leave your organized religion, the organized religion of your childhood? And you can give multiple answers, but look at the green lines at the bottom of each pair. Those are the more recent ones. And it says, look at the reasons they give for why they left religion. You stopped believing in the religion's teachings. Yeah, that seems logical. The religion's negative religious teachings about gay or lesbian people. Yeah, a lot of people didn't like that. Your family was never religious growing up. Yeah, maybe you were culturally Catholic, but you didn't really believe this stuff. It was bad for your mental health. That's a new addition to the list. Clergy sexual abuse scandals, sure. Or your church or congregation became too focused on politics. And here's the thing about all those answers. Those are answers, and again, people can give more than one answer, but like some of those things are not going to change anytime soon. We are still going to hear a lot of stories about clergy sexual abuse. You are definitely going to hear a lot about churches that become basically arms of the Republican Party as the election moves forward. You're definitely going to see more about mental health. As we have more second, third generation atheists, you're going to hear about our family was never religious growing up. All of that's very interesting. And definitely the anti-LGBTQ bigotry is not going to go away anytime soon. So here's the reason I show you that graph. That's what's happening in the United States. But what is happening in New Zealand? Is it the same? Is it different? What's going on with the Maori people? Why are they leaving organized religion? Is it for the same reasons or is it something very different? And so the paper I wanted to show you here, this is what just came out not long ago. Maori Atheism, a decolonizing project. And this is published in the New Zealand Journal of, I think, Social Science. And the thing about this, what the researchers did here is they basically got a cross section of like 16 different Maori, different demographics and all that. And they sat and they talked with them for research purposes to get their thoughts. on why they don't believe in God. And this is what this write-up is all about. And this is where it's like, all right, I didn't know much about the culture, but reading through this, it's very interesting to hear what their reasoning is. By the way, I want to correct myself. It was the New Zealand Journal of Social Sciences Online. And what they found, these researchers, is that Maori have very different reasons, very dark reasons for walking away from religion. So in a lot of cases, their subjects said religion is kind of embedded in the Maori culture. That means walking away from religion could be interpreted as walking away from your Maori identity. And by the way, that's something I've heard from Black people. I have heard that from Asian Americans as well. Like, you might be an atheist or you might have doubts about your religious faith, but also you're kind of hesitant about saying that out loud because you don't want to offend your parents or your grandparents, because you're being an immigrant, being a person of color, that's a part of your identity. You don't want to turn your back on that. But at the same time, what these subjects told the researchers is that ditching the religion of their Christian colonizers would give them a better opportunity to actually explore their ancestral heritage. And here's what the paper said. Before Europe made contact with New Zealand, Maori were polytheistic. And then as outsiders began to invade New Zealand, they kind of brought their Christianity with them. And according to the paper, it said, here we go. I want to show you this directly from the paper. This is fascinating. Early missionary reports claim that by the 1850s, between 60 and 90% of Maori identified as Christian. I mean, I'm not surprised by that, but man, that's a big number. So that's where they're like starting from in the 1850s. All the more reason to figure out why they're abandoning that religion now, what implications that may have. So some thoughts out of the 16 people they interviewed, there were some thoughts about religion that sprang up more than others. The idea that Christianity was the religion of the colonizers, so why should we have a continuing allegiance to it? That was a running theme. One of the things they said, here we go. This is interesting. This is a direct transcript from one of the people they interviewed here. Look at this from Aroha, a female in her 50s. I think that it would be for a lot of other Maori who are atheist, and that's the effect of colonization on us as a race, and of religion being the tool that was used to level them. Like, yeah, that is probably the reason. If I didn't have any other reasons, that would be the reason that I would never sit in the room with Christianity. Like, why do you want to hang on to the religion of your people's oppressors? Yeah. The researcher said, in reference to the Christian missions in New Zealand, assimilation projects, and the systematic oppression of the Maori people, that had a lot to do with it. One person said it was a tool of decimation. Christianity was seen as a foreign religion, so it wasn't as welcoming. It wasn't native to who they were. Yeah, they brought up religious hypocrisy, faith-based bigotry. They brought up the patriarchal nature of Christianity. They also mentioned just having religious doubts. But one thing they really called out was how Christianity's claim to exclusivity, which is not unique to Christianity, it usually involved demeaning their culture, because Christians viewed indigenous beliefs not just as wrong, but as evil, as satanic. So for a lot of these Maori people, being pro-Christian actually means being anti-Maori. Found that very interesting. They also said they wanted to reject Christianity on its own terms. They rejected it for the same reason that a lot of people do, because it's not true. But they pointed out that that leads to a lot of tension in their community, because when they cast aside belief in the supernatural, like I said, they also have to cast aside a lot of traditional Maori beliefs as well. And because they are casting aside a lot of traditional cultural beliefs, they said they experienced discrimination. They felt marginalized and burdened by societal expectations stemming from stereotypes. To put that another way, a lot of participants felt they were being accused by other Maori of not being true Maori because they didn't believe in a god. Atheism, they said, was seen as a white thing. And here's the most interesting thing I think I read in this whole piece. New Zealand's government has tried to take steps to rectify past wrongs and as a form of like reparations, if you will. And they are now paying more homage to Maori culture. But the way they do that often means recognizing a certain brand of spirituality as if that is what it means to be Maori. And these non religious Maori people are saying, don't do that. You should reject that too. One participant complained about how universities and government agencies seem to have an unwritten rule about this because to demonstrate your true adherence of being Maori, you had to do these things, behave in certain ways. So that was interesting. So I just want to say, like, the research is not comprehensive. It can't be. They only talked to 16 people. But the hope for this research, as one of the researchers told me, is that they hope this is the launching pad for more in-depth investigations of who the Maori are, how they think about religion, and what impact that's going to have down the line for their culture. Because this is like step one in what they hope is a long-term plan. And the one last thing I should say is that research, I have a link to it, which is that the research was conducted because of a grant that was awarded by Queen's University Belfast as part of their Explaining Atheism program. I serve as a media advisor on that program. So full disclosure right there. But I also found that research really interesting. So there you go. I'm going to pause there. I have one last story for you, but I'll get to questions before we jump to that. If there are any. There are a few interesting sounding religions. There's a few interesting sounding religions there. Do you mean in New Zealand in general? Probably. I'm sure there are. It's a place I've never been to. I hope I can go there soon. For what it's worth, I've also never seen Lord of the Rings. One of those things should happen soon. We'll see. My question is, how do we do it here? Bittersweet, I need a little more than that. I want to know how to de-religify as many people as possible. Been working on one slowly. That is an interesting question. I mean, age-old question of how do you do the atheism thing? I mean, I will tell you, my thing is not to debate people. I kind of show you the problems with religion. I hope a lot of people watching this are religious, and I hope you agree with me on pretty much everything I'm saying. But I would hope that when you hear enough of these stories, you realize religion is not a virtue. You realize, okay, maybe these ideas I was brought up with, I can let go of. But other people like doing debates and pointing out contradictions and pointing out the alternative explanations for things you always had religious explanations for. There's no one way to do it. Now, going back to the research, though, maybe an interesting question is all the tools that atheists in the US use, if this is something they care about, would it work in other places where religion is more embedded in a culture? Maybe not. Maybe pointing out religious contradictions, just no one cares. It's possible. I don't know. Wouldn't one reason be too busy on my phone? Is that the reason for why people are ditching religion? Probably. I mean, I've said this in talks before. I think the most powerful tool that convinced people to abandon organized religion is probably Google. I think that did more to get people away from religion than anything else, followed by the internet and having the ability to ask questions without asking your priest or the nun at Sunday school. You could just be like, I don't think this is real. Anyone else feel this way? And you could find answers about that. We've got a GE later in the year. Oh, general election. This is, I think, in the UK, so we'll get our chance. And we have council elections next week. Those are not going to go well for the Tories. We can only hope. That's fantastic. I hope that happens. Thank you for that update. All right. Let me go to one last story. If I can find it here. Oh, yes. Let's talk about this. This has one clip for you. Give me 1 second to pull this up. Okay. We have to talk about Doug Wilson. Because if you're looking for like a Christian cult in the United States, or at least one that's really close to being one, you'd be hard pressed to look any further than Moscow, Idaho, which is the home of Pastor Doug Wilson and his Christ Church. This is a place that kind of made a lot of headlines for all the wrong reasons during the pandemic. For me, that's where I started reading about them a lot more. I'll show you a tweet that caught a lot of people's attention. This is from June 30th, 2020. In the midst of the pandemic, everything shut down, no vaccines available. And this is a tweet: about 1,000 people attended a Christchurch joint service Sunday morning at this field house in Moscow. These people held a 1,000-person gathering when all the rest of us responsible people were like, I can't have a birthday party with my 5 closest friends because that would be dangerous. These idiots were like, 1,000 people? You don't need masks, just show up. We'll have church. This is what they were doing during the pandemic. This is Doug Wilson's church. Later on, when their city had COVID restrictions, they started protesting outside the city and saying, no, yeah, go ahead, arrest us. We're just trying to pray, begging police officers to like make martyrs of them. So this is also Doug Wilson's church. I was trying to figure out what else can I share with you about Doug Wilson's church that would really give you an idea of what these people are like. Well, here's a guy who I believe worked for the church. This is what he posted on Twitter in October of 2020. A friendly reminder. Brothers, a friendly reminder for elections. Make sure your wife votes exactly as you do. Control her vote. Why would she have a mind of her own? And when people pushed back on that, this is what he said. Hey, I'm serious about this. The husband is responsible for how his wife votes. He should not be abusive or a jerk about this, and he should seek counsel from his wife on elections. But at the end of the day, he's responsible. Tell your woman how to vote. That's a guy who works for Doug Wilson. That's the type of people we're dealing with. Oh, wait, I'm not done. Let me tell you more about Doug Wilson because he's a horrible person. This is a Q&A he did. I'm just going to point you to a question and answer, because he usually goes through like 20, 30 questions in one of these things. Here, how's this? Do you think supporting same-sex marriage is a more serious problem than supporting slavery? Yes, far more serious. What am I supposed to do with this, you guys? Supporting same-sex marriage, so much worse than slavery, apparently. And there's one more, and this is just, oh my God, this guy is creepy as hell. This is a whole article he wrote on why Christian women are prettier. And let's read through one paragraph of this. I make these observations not as some kind of creepy journalist, but simply as someone with eyes in his head. I travel a good bit, spending time in airports and the like. And I've also done hard time at Christian conferences, staring at the ladies. Having been in this place, I am in good position to state that there's a marked difference between Christian women and women in the general population. Christian women are a lot prettier, which is the creepiest ass thing pastor has ever written. This is weird. By the way, some of you may be wondering, Doug Wilson, that name sounds familiar. Didn't he do a debate with Christopher Hitchens? And there was a whole movie about it. Yes, there was. That was a while ago. I think the movie was called Collision. It's, I'm sure, online somewhere. But that is Doug Wilson's church as well. Christopher Hitchens liked to debate. Doug Wilson likes to debate people. This is also what they do here. And there was one other thing I wanted to show you. Here we go. Yeah, this is the part I wanted to share with you. There was an article in the on the website Vice, and they basically went into Christchurch's culture of abuse and social control. And look at this paragraph right here. Vice has interviewed 12 former and current church members, and don't worry about the word ex-Kirkers. That involves like someone who worked for the church or the ministry a while back. But what they say at the end here, they describe a punitive community in which women are told they must defer to church leaders and cannot say no to their husbands. Men are taught to strictly control their homes, and those who speak out can be isolated and harassed. So, of course, the men have to tell their women how to vote. That's how it works in this place. So, all of that is a reminder of like who this guy is. That's Doug Wilson. That is his church. It's a really messed up place. You should also know the church has about, as of a few years ago, like 900 members in a town of about 25,000 people. So they're not quite there where they can outnumber everybody, vote their people into positions of power, but it's not nothing. So I bring all this up to tell you that Doug Wilson did an interview recently. Guess who he did an interview with? He did it with this guy, Tucker Carlson. I did an interview with Tucker Carlson, and the caption on Tucker Carlson's tweet there, Pastor Doug Wilson is the Christian nationalist they warned you about. And I think that's supposed to make him look good, I think, even though obviously that's a horrible thing. But no kidding, Doug Wilson is a Christian nationalist. He wants Christianity to take over everything. And they did an interview together, and I'm not going to play it for you because screw Tucker Carlson. But I did want to show you one thing. This was found by Right Wing Watch because after that interview went public, Doug Wilson did another series of Q&A, the sort of Q&A where he likes to say slavery is fine relative to gay people. So he was doing one of those question and answer sessions. And he basically tried explaining to his followers, like, you guys, I'm not a Christian nationalist. I don't want the United States to be declared a theocracy or anything like that. I don't want to force my religion on everyone else. However, he also said things would be way better for everybody if Christianity were forced upon them. He said things would be way better than what we are dealing with now if the United States was, at least on paper, declared a Christian nation, or the laws were like steeped in the foundation of Christian nationalism. Let me play you this clip. It's about a minute long because the thing that this made me laugh at first, he actually had ways of making it a Christian nation that have no basis in reality. He's going to name 3 ways we could just magically turn the US into a Christian nation like that if we wanted to. And they're all insane. So let me play this for you and you could see it. And then we'll talk about it.
So if we are not to have an established church at the federal level or established churches at the state level, in what way could America ever be considered a Christian nation? This could be done in various ways. The president could issue a proclamation that acknowledged that Jesus rose from the dead, and Congress could authorize the funds to have that proclamation printed and bound, read in all the schools, and posted in all the federal courthouses. That could be fun. The Supreme Court could take up a new religious liberty case, ideally one with Jack Phillips in it, and in their decision they could reaffirm and reboot the decision of the Supreme Court in the 1892 Holy Trinity versus the United States case, in which the court determined that the United States was in fact a Christian nation, and had been such from the beginning. Or the Apostles' Creed could be incorporated into the Constitution. None of these actions would establish a particular Christian denomination as being the mascot of the government.
Everything about that is dumb. First of all, he's basically saying we're not trying to push Lutheranism on everybody. We're just saying just declare it's a Christian nation. Everyone's cool with that, so it wouldn't be offensive. It wouldn't violate the separation of church and state or whatever it is. Like, no, saying Christianity, we're a Christian country, that's quite literally establishing a religion. It doesn't matter if you pick a denomination. But what was the first thing he said? He said, why don't we just have the president issue a proclamation saying, quote, Jesus rose from the dead, and Congress could just have it printed and bound and read in all the schools and posted in all the courthouses. Just like that. Just have a thing, Jesus rose from the dead. Everyone would just have to see it everywhere, and then everything would be cool. Like, you can't do that with crosses. You can't do that with Bible verses, but he thinks like if we just say it and put the government stamp of approval on it, haha, we win, and then something. I don't know what he thinks will happen if I have to walk into a courthouse and see that, but he thinks everything will get better somehow. He also said we could just have the Supreme Court say in a decision, it's a Christian nation and has been from the beginning, as if when this Supreme Court says something, everyone just takes it as gospel truth. Pun intended. Like, no, no one's taken the Supreme Court seriously at all. Yeah, we're a nation of laws, but it doesn't mean you have to respect what the justices are saying. And the idea that they could just lie about our history and then just stick it in writing and then everyone will believe it. Guess what? The Supreme Court has literally issued decisions that we've come to ignore or overturn decades, centuries later, whether it's like Dred Scott or anything like that. So it doesn't matter what the Supreme Court does. And then he says the Apostles' Creed could be incorporated into the Constitution. In case you're not familiar, let me show you the Apostles' Creed. Here we go. I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. This goes on for a while with a bunch of biblical BS. How the hell do you incorporate that into the Constitution? Like with an amendment that 75% of states have to agree to? You think blue states are going to go along with this? You can't get that in the Constitution. I don't know how you get the idea of that in the Constitution. I don't know how you think you can amend the Constitution at this point or change it or like make an addition somehow. What is he? I don't know what he's going for. But he basically says all of these things should be fine because we're just declaring it to be a Christian nation and not a particular Christian denomination. So it's all fine. Like, no, we shouldn't have In God We Trust in public schools and courthouses either, for what it's worth. But like, I think this is where he's getting it from, because he's not pulling these out of his ass entirely. I think where he's getting this from is he's saying, we did that with In God We Trust. We just made it the motto. And because it's the motto, you can use that as justification to put it up everywhere, which is true, except In God We Trust doesn't even mention Christianity. He wants to mention Christianity, so it goes further than that. But the other thing is, even if In God We Trust is on our money and, you know, under God is in the pledge and In God We Trust is in some schools and courthouses, what has that done to make our society better? If anything, it's just made it more divisive because a lot of people, more and more people, don't believe in any of that bullshit. So it's not like it makes it better. Why would taking a more extreme statement of Christianity, why would that make things even better? It wouldn't. So that's dumb. But I think that's where he's getting this from. I would love to say that his idea goes too far, but conservative justices are all over the place. Who knows if they would let it slide? Honestly, it's also hard to believe the Supreme Court, a majority of this Supreme Court, would go along with a Christian nation statement, because that would undercut other arguments they've made that were radical enough about how, like, local governments could allow a giant Christian cross to remain on public property, not because it's religious, but because it's been there a long time. It's tradition. Their whole argument is, no, we're not allowing this because of religion. We're allowing it for another reason. If they come back and say, oh yeah, we can declare it a Christian nation, they're undercutting their own legitimacy, which fine, they should. I mean, you know, and the idea that you're going to put an over-the-top religious text in the Constitution makes no sense at all. So the point is, Doug Wilson, he is a Christian nationalist, whether he likes that phrase or not. He wants the country to function as a theocracy, even if he's not using that word. And he's selling this harmful bullshit to his gullible followers, even though the process to get there defies all logic. You know, later in the video, he also said things like he could be pushed away from Christian nationalism, or at least the terminology, if, for example, advocates did something stupid, like if so-called Christian nationalists blew up the Washington Monument or said things that were anti-Semitic, which, by the way, they have, then, of course, he would not be a Christian nationalist. But he says that like he's a good actor in and of itself. Like, I'm a good guy. I'm trying to do the right thing here. He's not. He's a religious cultish leader who has pushed people to make awful, sometimes life-threatening decisions about their own lives when it comes to like COVID masking and things like that and not wearing it. So Christian nationalism, bad enough on its own, but decent Christians ought to reject it for no other reason than because Doug Wilson is apparently all for it. And the best thing you could do is run the hell away from Doug Wilson. I'm going to stop there. Let's take any other questions. Otherwise, I might be done for the night. Is he the guy who said husbands should be able to have their wives' votes? Doug Wilson is not the guy who said that, but it was a guy who worked for Doug Wilson. It is entirely possible Doug Wilson has said that, but I did not find that. Does he think that the difference between religions is the denomination? Yes. Yeah, like I think he's one of those guys who's like, Catholics, they're weird. I'm a Christian where everything makes logical sense. I think that's where I think he believes that. Cool. I think we're done for the night. I'll leave this down below. Thank you for supporting this channel. Next week, I will be here on Thursday night, not Friday. So I hope you can join me then. But yeah, support the channel by going to patreon.com/Hemant and have a good weekend. I'll see you all later. Thanks so much. And thank you to Den for helping out, as always.